How can a cruise vacation feel so cheap when everything about it looks expensive? Think about it. A massive ship crossing the ocean for days, thousands of passengers on board, unlimited buffets, swimming pools, live entertainment, luxury restaurants, air conditioning running 24 hours a day, and an entire floating city moving through the middle of the ocean. So how can some cruise vacations cost less than a normal hotel trip on land? That question confuses almost everyone the first time they look at cruise prices, because from the outside, cruise ships look unbelievably expensive to operate. And the truth is, they are. Modern cruise ships cost billions of dollars to build. Some carry more than 6,000 passengers, others are larger than small towns, and every single day, those ships consume enormous amounts of fuel, food, electricity, and labor just to continue operating. But despite all of that, cruise companies still advertise surprisingly cheap ticket prices. And that's because the cruise industry works very differently from what most passengers imagine. The ticket price is only part of the business. In reality, cruise ships are carefully designed floating economies, entire systems built around keeping passengers entertained, relaxed, and spending money without fully realizing it. Because once passengers step on board, the cruise line already understands something important. People behave differently at sea. They feel freer, more emotional, more willing to spend. And cruise ships are designed around that psychology. Everything from the buffet layout, to the music near the pool, to the placement of casinos and luxury shops is part of a much larger business strategy operating quietly behind the scenes. So tonight, we're exploring the hidden economics of cruise ships, where your money actually goes. Why cruises feel cheap at first, but often become far more expensive later, and how modern cruise ships became some of the most profitable floating businesses in the world. Because beneath the sunsets and luxury dinners, there's an entire financial system silently operating underneath the ocean. Cruise ships may feel relaxing to passengers, but behind the scenes, they are incredibly expensive machines operating non-stop every second of the day. And one of the biggest expenses of all is fuel. Modern cruise ships burn enormous amounts of fuel just to keep moving across the ocean. The engines never truly stop, even while passengers sleep. The ship continues consuming energy beneath the surface, and it's not just movement. Cruise ships must power air conditioning, elevators, kitchens, swimming pools, casinos, theaters, restaurants, internet systems, lighting across hundreds of hallways. Because a cruise ship isn't just transportation, it's a floating city. A city operating 24 hours a day in the middle of the ocean. Then there's the food. Thousands of passengers eat constantly on board. Breakfast buffets, late-night pizza, luxury dinners, snacks near the pool, and cruise ships must prepare enormous amounts of food every single day. Fresh vegetables, meat, seafood, desserts, drinks. Everything must be loaded before or during port stops with careful planning. Because once the ship leaves port, there's no simple grocery store nearby. And then there's the crew. Some cruise ships employ thousands of workers from around the world. Chefs, cleaners, engineers, entertainers, security staff, waiters, technicians, medical teams. Behind every smooth passenger experience, there are countless workers operating quietly behind the scenes, cleaning hallways overnight, repairing systems, preparing meals before sunrise, maintaining engines deep below the decks. Most passengers never fully realize how much labor is required to keep cruise life feeling effortless, and maybe that's because cruise ships are designed to hide complexity. Passengers see relaxation, but beneath the surface, an enormous operation never stops moving. Here's the part most passengers don't realize. The cruise ticket itself often isn't where the real profit happens. In many cases, cruise lines intentionally keep ticket prices lower to attract more passengers on board. Because once guests enter the ship, an entirely different business model begins. And suddenly, everything around the passenger becomes an opportunity for spending. Drinks packages, casinos, specialty restaurants, spa treatments, luxury shopping, photography services, internet packages, excursions at ports, and while none of these purchases may seem huge individually, together they generate massive amounts of revenue. That's why cruise ships are carefully designed environments. The casinos are often placed in busy areas passengers naturally walk through. Luxury stores appear near entertainment zones. Professional photos are taken constantly during dinners and events. Even Wi-Fi becomes part of the business strategy, because once passengers are isolated in the middle of the ocean, their spending behavior changes. People become more emotional on vacation, more impulsive, more willing to reward themselves. And cruise lines understand that psychology extremely well. That's one reason cruises can feel surprisingly affordable at first, so the company doesn't necessarily expect to make all its profit from the ticket. The real business happens after boarding, and perhaps the most fascinating part is how subtle the system feels. Passengers rarely feel pressured directly. Instead, the ship creates an atmosphere where spending feels natural, relaxing, almost automatic. A drink while watching the sunset, a specialty dinner after a long day, a spa visit during a rainy afternoon at sea, and slowly, small purchases become part of the cruise experience itself. That's why cruises feel emotionally different from many other vacations. Because the ship isn't only transporting passengers across the ocean, it's carefully shaping the environment around them every hour of the journey. In many ways, cruise ships are carefully engineered emotional experiences, not just vacations, because everything on board is designed to influence how passengers feel. Lighting changes throughout the day, music shifts depending on the atmosphere. Restaurants are positioned strategically, pool decks are designed around energy and movement. Casinos often avoid natural light and clocks. Even the architecture of the ship encourages exploration. And all of it quietly affects passenger behavior. Because cruise lines understand something powerful. People spend differently when they feel relaxed, disconnected from normal life, surrounded by entertainment and ocean views. That's why cruises can feel strangely timeless. Passengers stop thinking about routines, schedules begin disappearing, and life on board slowly becomes its own temporary reality, a floating world separated from normal society. And perhaps that's the real reason cruises feel cheap at first, because the cruise industry understands that the emotional experience matters more than the initial ticket price. Once passengers fall in love with the atmosphere, the spending often follows naturally. But despite all the business strategies and psychology, there's also something genuinely fascinating about cruise ships. They are some of the most complex moving structures humans have ever built. Floating cities carrying thousands of lives across open ocean. Entire economies operating silently beneath luxury and entertainment. And maybe that's why cruise ships continue fascinating people around the world, because they represent more than vacations. They represent escape, emotion, movement, and the strange human desire to leave ordinary life behind for a few days at sea. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more cinematic cruise documentaries and hidden cruise stories here on Sail Smart. And tell me in the comments, would you still take a cruise knowing how carefully the entire experience is designed around passenger spending? Or does that make cruising even more fascinating to you? Until next time, travel smart, sail smarter.